Hello, and welcome to Crushing Classical Podcast, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm your host, Tracy Friedlander. On this episode, I interviewed Josephine Lee, the president, artistic director, and conductor of the Chicago Children's Choir. I met Josephine in the early 2000s when we worked together for the first time. I was really excited to interview her and talk to her about her fascinating career path. It's not even common as a classical musician these days to get a job in your 20s, let alone do that and stay there for nearly 20 years and counting. This is exactly what Josephine did. She took what started out as just a job and grew it into her passion and career. I wanted to talk to her about her career and hear about the highs and lows and the ins and outs of what building a career like this was like for her. Through the years, she has created amazing collaborations and partnerships with world-class musicians and ensembles like the Chicago Symphony, Ravinia Festival, and Lyric Opera. Her mission to inspire and change lives through music lives in this group, and she has been working to spread that message far and wide, both on world tours and exciting projects in Chicago. Let's get started. Hey, Josephine, welcome.
Hey, Tracy, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I love interviewing everyone. All my guests are great, but it's really special and fun for me to interview people that I've known for a long time, especially because I've been able to see how your career has blossomed since I met you. And I met a little background for the audience. I met Josephine when I was playing Mahler 2 backstage with the Chicago Symphony, and you were conducting the backstage band. So, yeah. So, and that was back around what, 2003 or 4?
Yeah, was it? Maybe 3.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's right. That sounds about right. And what kind of career path were you on around then? I think you were the conductor already of the Chicago Children's Choir.
Yeah, I started at Chicago Children's Choir in 98.
Oh, wow. Okay, you've been there for a long time.
Yeah, straight out of grad school. So I became artistic director in 99 and started fostering these partnerships with the Lyric. So Donald Palumbo, who's now at the Metropolitan Opera, he came and auditioned me to work with the Lyric Opera and train their children's chorus. And then simultaneously, Dwayne Wolfe of the Chicago Symphony Chorus came and auditioned me to continue with their winter programming, which at that time was called Welcome Mule. It's a holiday show that incorporated kids. And then in I think it was 2002, I met Wells Kaufman, who is the president and CEO of Ravinia. And we met actually at the Cultural Center. And he came up to me after a performance and said, I want you to perform at Ravinia every summer.
Oh.
How would you like to perform with Ladysmith Black Mambazo? And I was completely blown away. I said, oh, yeah, I'm there. And so from that point on, I started working with Eschenbach, and we did the Mahler 8th Symphony. And then it led into Conlon, who conducted the Mahler 2. And I met him through Wells. And so that's how I had the opportunity to conduct the brass. But in 2002, because this was 2003 with you,
Yeah.
summer of 2002, July, there was a gala. The Women's Board hosts an annual gala, and Bobby McFerrin was the guest conductor alongside Kathleen Battle and Denise Graves.
Wow.
And Wells had commissioned a piece inspired by the train, of course, because as you know, the metro runs there,
Yeah.
Ravinia. And so Bobby wrote a piece called He Ran to the Train with a guy named Roger Treese, which the CSO premiered that evening. So because Bobby was going to sing on He Ran to the Train, I ended up conducting the CSO that evening as the
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But
So what was that like? Did you start to entertain the idea that you wanted to be an orchestra conductor, or like when you were originally you were in grad school as a pianist, correct? At DePaul?
as a conductor at
Oh, you,
Western, yeah,
oh,
conduct
at Northwestern. Okay.
undergrad piano with Dimitri Paperno.
So you were studying conducting at Northwestern.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, which is so interesting. I started conducting at age 15. My primary instruments, as you know, are piano and violin.
Mm-hmm.
And I started that at age 3 and then simultaneously sang because my mother was a teacher and also self-taught musician. And she really instilled that like passion for voice. So I did all three things growing up, and then at age 15, I took over the children's choir that I was a part of, and so kind of modeled it after the Vienna Boys Choir, where I was on the piano, playing and conducting at the same time, and then
Oh,
yeah,
so you really started from a really young age doing work with choir and piano.
and orchestras, and I played in orchestras my whole life. So it's so ironic that I don't know. Here I am as running a Chicago Children's Choir, but my whole life I was just passionate about orchestral music. Like
Yeah.
I never sang in school choirs or anything like that, and I loved classical music. But I think it's just so fascinating how your life, you know, just is so unpredictable, and then you somehow are able to merge all of your passions, if you open yourself to it. So here I am, however many years later, um, decades later, 2000, having the opportunity to work with the CSO and the Lyric and the Oregon Symphony and the Grant Park Music Festival, like all my worlds collided. So it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah. So would you say that because you stuck with, that you had this position that was yours in the Chicago Children's Choir that it opened up more opportunities conducting for you with these orchestras? I mean, did you ever doubt that you wanted to stick with them and go more orchestral conducting route, or what was that like for you deciding, making those kind of decisions in your path?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we performed the Kaddish Symphony with the Grand Park Orchestra, in the Petrilla Bandshell with Carlos Kalmar, I believe this was happening simultaneously in the early 2000s. Carlos said to me, "If you're really serious about this orchestral conducting, you need to leave Chicago and start assisting conductors,
Mm-hmm.
studying the scores and being an assistant conductor. In other words,
Yeah.
you know what that entails."
Yeah.
And I basically said, "So you're saying to me that I would have to leave the position that I have currently in Chicago, where I can leverage, my passion for voice and instrument, all of it, and also above all, the underlying kind of mission of why the CCC exists, and we could talk about that later,
Yeah.
the heartbeat of the future, to go and sit when I serve this one genre, and
Uh,
and then also take a significant like lifestyle change."
yeah.
And at that time, I consciously made the choice not to do that. So to answer your question, would I want to be doing conducting full time? Um, I would love it, but I realized, by being in this industry meaning like, being in the music industry, being in a nonprofit industry, being traveling the world, I've been able to understand why I exist and how institutions such as the great symphonies and the operas exist. If you don't educate and you don't inspire young people to appreciate or to pursue this art form, it will die. And
Right.
I have been, fortunate enough to be able to leverage, the knowledge that I've been given, but then to inspire and to instill that same excitement and passion. Like when we go to Carmen, or for example, we did an entire run with the Chicago Symphony just recently, last week, Mary Mary Chicago, even this holiday program, having 160 kids up there who've never truly, unless they were in these special projects like Othello or the Mahlers, have never been able to even touch, or be accompanied by the Great Chicago Symphony, had the opportunity to go through an entire run with them, even though they were holiday classics. They have been so excited, and so enlightened by the entire experience that is the seed that we are planting to continue this lineage of Western traditional music. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then, underscoring all of this is really about creating young people who are culturally, astute and, learning different social codes and learning about culture and history through music. There's a whole other social mission to it, which is great. So, what would my life have been like had I, made that conscious choice to divorce myself from this and just singularly pursue that? It would not be as enriched, to be honest.
So you're glad you made the choice.
Yeah, I am. I think there are key people in your life that help guide you, to make the right choices. My parents, who passed away in 2001, so that was kind of an interesting, tumultuous time of my life where I was making some wild choices, but always sticking to the core of what they wanted me to do and to be, and that was to, spread peace and love and bridge cultural divide through the power of music.
Would you say that's your mission with the Chicago Children's Choir?
Yes, and I found my home, so to speak, during those formidable years. The reason why I even found the Chicago Children's Choir, or how I discovered them, was of course at DePaul when I used to see them perform their neighborhood branch, their satellite ensemble. But after I finished my graduate studies at Northwestern, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and my parents are quite elderly at that time. That's a whole other story. But I was already supporting them, supplementing their mortgage, etc. And so I heard about the Chicago Children's Choir opening. So walked into the Cultural Center, summer of '98, August, and I went in and I auditioned for this in-school and after-school opportunity. So for those of you that don't know about the CCC, this year we're celebrating our 60th anniversary.
Wow.
It was founded in 1956 during the height of the Civil Rights Movement as a response to the injustice and the race riots that were going on at that time. And the founder, who was a Unitarian minister, it's not a religiously affiliated organization, but he really believed that by bringing children from different backgrounds together through music, that they would become, that we would create a better world. So what started as a small Hyde Park ensemble of 23 is now citywide, 4,400 kids. We're in 80 Chicago schools. We have 10 satellite neighborhood programs throughout the city. We recently opened one a couple years ago in Englewood, recently in Austin. And then you have this young male ensemble, so boys that go through that transition. More often than not, children's chorus only keeps treble high voices. And then we have this top ensemble called the Voice of Chicago, the All-Stars, that travel internationally, 110 voices. So total, we were 4,400 strong.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize how huge it was.
Yeah, we quadrupled in size since I started. I think it's hysterical.
That's incredible. So, wow, just really your rich background and being, from, your background and everything, coming into this situation, really enriched them and your lives, or their lives and your life,
Yeah.
it seems. So you, and you've taken them on multiple tours, and I know one of them was to Korea and one of them was to Cuba. So you're going to some really amazing places, you know?
Yeah, Cuba this past summer, which was, was completely mind blowing to go to a country that has been shut off from the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and to see how happy though, I mean, it's not, and how culturally diverse and rich and educated the Cubans are, um, and how open they were to our young people, and the exchanges were so powerful. We sang their folk songs. They love classical music. Um, and then we sang this pop piece called La Gozadera, and they went absolutely mad.
Really?
They were dancing with us, and then we taught them this gospel song, I Need You to Survive, that was written after 9/11 by David Fraser and Hezekiah Walker. And the words are so simple but so beautiful. I need you, you need me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me, agree with me. We're all part. And then I love you, I pray for you. And as you were singing this song, I mean, we were locked eyes with people, and most of the young people are not fluent in Spanish, but it really didn't matter in that moment. It was about the connection that we are all one.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's so great. I just love how intentional your career has been and how you started at such a young age, just really knowing what you wanted. It seems like I'm sure it wasn't like that all the time, but that you had a vision for yourself, and then when you got to the Chicago Children's Choir, just kept growing that vision for about them and making it about them and what their mission was. It's just so beautiful. So, on this podcast, I often ask everyone about their crossroads moment where you would be, on your career path and you have a moment where you have to choose between a safe path or something that's more risky or unknown. And I call it the fuck this moment. And I just want to know if you've had a moment like that in your career where you really had to make a choice and go the unknown route.
Yes. So that happened in 2010.
Okay.
Actually happened twice. Once when in 2002, right after, so my parents both passed away. My mom died April 2001, 9
Hmm.
hit, and then my father passed away in November. And then in February of 2002, the CCC made its debut at Carnegie Hall. It's a huge
Wow.
milestone for us because the choir had never been recognized for their excellence, and it took a long time to build that. Even though they had
Hmm.
a great social mission, they were just another children's choir, and and finally people were recognizing the choir for not only the social aspect but for the artistic excellence.
Uh-huh.
We worked really, really hard. But at that time, after my parents passed, I was just like, I think now I can, pursue my classical career like full time. My parents are gone, and no one's telling me really what to do. And
Yeah.
now I can, give this all up because I struggled with it. Right, I was,
Hmm.
my whole life practiced and originally thought I was going to be a lawyer. Well, when I realized, I mean, that was certainly not attainable at all. I mean, that was not my calling. I've,
Hmm.
but being a musician is at my core, and working with the kids was amazing. But we weren't performing day in day out, working on major scores like I would loved to have done, every day. All
Yeah.
um, how we get with the Mahlers, like we're, just obsessing over every phrase.
Yeah.
Just to me, that's just the most beautiful thing. But then after the Carnegie Hall concerts, we had a performance in Harlem Riverside Church. And the rehearsal, we had like 120 singers, and people were tired because we did 2 morning concerts, which were excellent. But at night, we had Chichester Psalms on the program, from like anywhere from Chichester Psalms, world music to pop music, songs from Aida. I mean, it was a full program. And this church did not have the right staging, and the singers were tired, and there's a lot of attitude. So I thought to myself, all right, this is your sign. Like, this is it. You don't have to do this anymore. Your parents aren't telling you to do this. You can actually really you're going to Europe tomorrow. The following day, I was dating this guy at the time in Vienna, and I thought I was going to end up living there. And I'm like, now you can really pursue that career that you wanted all along. So That's what I said to myself. So here we go. Start of the program, enter with the Shosholoza, South African piece. And the next song was Ave Maria, this feeble Ave Maria. And during rehearsal, it was so out of tune. It's just a beautiful, simple C major chord opening. It was a disaster. And we had this like antiphonal chorus behind me, and it was just not lining up. And I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be horrible. So we started, with this solo. I can't really sing right now because it's post Christmas. But anyway, he's singing, and then this Ave Maria chord just locked. I mean, it was transcendent. And for the first time, I looked up at the kids, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was angelic. And, I performed at both my parents' funerals and didn't shed a tear because, as a professional, I don't do that. And for the first time, I felt tears streaming down my face.
Oh, wow.
Because I was so moved by that moment. And that was the moment I realized that it wasn't about me anymore, that it wasn't about my career and about furthering my development as this artist. It was about transferring knowledge and supporting the next generation of people and artists.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
That was the first moment. And then the second one, people are like, so why have you been there so long? Like, why are you still, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Either. I mean, I'm telling I was like, that was, okay, so that was the first sign, right? So parents pass away. I'm like, oh, I got to leave. Nope. Then I realized I had to stay.
Yeah.
We had several transitions with executive directors. They moved on to other opportunities. So here we are in 2010, May of 2010. And my predecessor comes up. She just one day said, Josephine, I just want to share with you some news, but I think this is a great opportunity for you. So, just hear me out. And she basically told me she took another job. So I was artistic director until 2009.
Okay.
Okay, so which is different because the nonprofit model, you have this executive and then you have an artistic director, and the executive director deals with the board, etc.
Right.
I was still dealing with the board, still fundraising, still doing all of the artistic programming, but just didn't have the title. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
In other words, like the way that was structured, which was fine with me. I was totally fine, happy with that arrangement. And then she said, Josephine, I want you to, keep an open mind. And I said, okay. And then we had to do a search. So we brought in an amazing board chair at that time, and he was like, listen, I have a recommendation, that we reorganize this. And that's when I became president and artistic director in June of 2010. And then that allowed for me to deal directly with, he's like, you're the external facing person anyway, you're doing all the fundraising, you're doing, the programming, the recruiting of the board, the donors, all that. So you just have to keep moving forward, and you have to bring in a chief operating officer. And so that's when we reorged the CCC, and we've been able to do a lot of great things. But I give, of course, tons of kudos and love to my predecessors, and I think for you that, for anyone listening, that's a pivotal moment, right? Because I could have made the choice to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
But through that opportunity, I was able to go to Harvard Business School and, do an executive education program and just like be inspired. And also realizing that, the endless number of the opportunities that are out there, right, to help shape, what this looks like for the future. And the world is changing. You know this. I mean, I can't believe there's a course out there at universities, how to manage millennials. It, again, blows.
Really?
Yes, there's a course because millennials, so they say, which I don't even agree with that. I don't like lumping people into categories,
Right.
generation, because I work with young people who are active and motivated and, you know, disciplined, and diligent and, positive. And, I think it's about really uh, creating a passion. Everyone needs to find their passion and whatever that is. And they need to not be apologetic about that passion. Um, and I think we need to stop pigeonholing, you know, professions as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it's about motivating people. I mean, for me, it's even beyond music. Yes, inspiring, but like if you don't have people who are excited about classical music, I mean, you play the French horn. If people don't even know what that sounds like, I was actually listening to a friend of mine talk to his family member about that they don't understand the difference of having three French horns versus six, and they were
Mm.
talking about timbre. And this guy's an amazing music director of pop artists, and but there are people who really, a generation probably, that will not understand what a true violin sounds like because they're so conditioned and to hear synth sounds.
Yep.
So where does the human, aspect? When do we become so just
Yeah.
ties to that? And you and I know how hard it is to practice. I hated practicing. And
Yeah.
and even now, like I'm working with a voice, and even with young, and I'm telling them you have to know your music memorized 1 month before you perform it. And that's not just so you have it memorized, that's so you can really embody what it and enjoy the music making process of performance. When it's completely ingrained in your entire soul, only then can you allow yourself the freedom to express and to take it to that next level of emotion.
Yes. So, do you have many students who want to continue a career in vocal, like some kind of using their voice in their career singing wise?
Yes, we do. I mean, not all of them go on to pursue music, and actually, that's a great thing.
Yeah, that's
uh,
a lot of
that's
people.
a lot of people, and it's too much. No, but we have kids who definitely are, on that track. Um,
Hmm.
they're singers at, Juilliard, or kids who are writing their own music. I mean, we have distinguished alums all over the world. Um, and I don't want to just name one of them, but they're doing great things, singer songwriters, poets, composers. I mean, they're all over the place. And however, you know, that industry is changing. You know?
Yeah, well, that's the point of this podcast, really, is to talk about that. I really think in order for classical music to survive, everyone's going to have to start taking responsibility for creating a career for themselves because as our society moves and changes, um, it may not continue to be supported in the way that it is now.
100%. And I'll give you a perfect example of young musicians who come out of the system, academia,
Hmm.
conservatory, and then end up having chips on their shoulders.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna fly. And I had a group of an orchestra that we hired. I ended up doing that too. Just bringing in the best young musicians.
Uh-huh.
Beethoven's Ninth at Millennium Park. a couple years ago, and and we did another piece. I think it was more of a popular piece, but even with the Beethoven, I said to them, I said, you have to perform this at the highest level so they feel aesthetically how great Beethoven is. But if you're not dialed in and passionately playing this at the highest level, they're never going to understand it. That's why I don't even understand. What I don't understand also is when you're doing these outreach concerts, I call them the drive-by concerts, or when people like to bus and go, I don't know why they don't bring in the best singers for the youngest children. They always bring in understudies. No, you should bring in the best players.
Yeah.
That like hair raising, like the goosebump moment, you get that when you bring in but if you have an attitude about this, playing popular music, or, if you're not able to be diverse, and have an open mind, you will be obsolete.
Yep.
No, I think generally with classical musicians, they have this, arrogance towards music that's not at the highest level of classicism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and so they have a tendency to turn their nose up to it, and I understand why. But that's where that's not going to get you very far, because half of the business is about having a great attitude as well.
Definitely. Definitely.
But I do think and you can edit this as you wish, but I mean, I do think sometimes there is an an arrogance towards certain genres.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I don't have a problem putting it on the podcast. I know that it's the truth, about and that's what I was saying about audience. Like, um, we have to evolve, you know,
Yes, I mean,
as musicians coming into the 21st century.
yeah, and I think I'm going to give you a perfect example. So recently, um, I was able to had the opportunity to work with Chance the Rapper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and um, it was great because his music director called and he's like, "Hey, Chance wants the kids on the recording for his coloring book mixtape." And I said, "Absolutely, we'll do whatever." He's a Chicago guy, really humble, super nice people. And I said, "Whatever you need." So we brought the kids in and they did some background vocals. And then as he was playing some of these recordings for me, because he had like 5 days left till it dropped, and I said, "You know what you really need? You need to add like an orchestra. You need to add some strings, some brass, percussion if possible. Like, you need to fill this out because it'll elevate it." And he's like, "Yes, I will. That would be great." And then it
Nice.
happened. So then I got, my composer in residence, amazing guy, Mitchell, former student as well. And he knocked it out. We got it all arranged and brought the musicians in. And, to their credit, they had a very positive attitude, knowing what it was all about. And,
Hmm.
you can hear at least, elements of it. And to someone like him who, probably didn't grow up with classical music, to be open to it, I think it's equally as important for those of us who have been trained, highly trained, to have that same openness. I think it's happening more and more because I
Hmm.
think people are realizing, such as yourself, remember we were all in the grind, like, oh my God, I want to
Yeah.
be a so I want to be on that, sub list, etc. And I got to say, I have some CSO musicians, like, David Griffin, his son's in our choir. I mean, they're just the
Yeah.
nicest people,
Yeah, I know.
nicest people. So
They're
it's like,
great.
yeah, so I think it's more like those who are either, trying to get into this industry, you know, um, as a general note, just to not have an attitude about it,
Oh, yeah. Totally.
because no one's
Um,
greater than anyone else. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, I mean, some people are going to have attitudes and some aren't. I'm not saying that all classical musicians would be one way or another, but that's definitely the truth, what you're saying. And, I've talked to several people on this podcast, who really don't even want us to use the term classical music anymore. Like it's very, you know, they just want to think of it as music
Yes.
and that we don't have to separate ourselves from the other genres and that it can be just a thing that we love and it's all one thing, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I think that was their point, some of them. I mean, there was two guys who said this. One of them was the co-founder of this really cool company called Group Muse. Have you ever heard of it?
Mhm.
It's this company that started up in Boston and they they created a platform for home hosting chamber concerts. And so you can go on there as if you're a musician to get gigs playing, with your chamber group in people's homes. And then you can also go on there as someone who wants to host these concerts. And I just spoke to a musician, a former student of my husband's yesterday who's in town visiting. And he said he's done several of them in New York. And it's just like the wave of the future that people are um, taking more responsibility for their careers and being more open to different genres. And that's really where it's going, I think. It needs to go that way,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know?
It'll be interesting to see how, someone once called those establishments these major, which I love. Again, I'm saying this with the most, someone calls them museums. They're just living museums. And
Orchestras are, is that what you're saying?
orchestras, operas,
Yeah.
they're just, and, it makes me sad at the same time because I think it's such a great, institution. You know what I mean? Because I grew up in it, you grew up in it, and I appreciate so much. And just seeing the way these kids reacted to like hearing live musicians play the Tchaikovsky Nutcracker Suite and all that was just so powerful. It's like,
Hmm.
man, they can't do it alone. They have to do it as an ensemble. It's like the ultimate teamwork to make the
Yeah,
concept.
it is. It's a great art form, and I'm not saying it needs to go away. I'm just saying that we have to change with the times and we can still do these things, but
That's right.
you have to pay attention to what people want to hear.
100%. I mean, it even comes down to, and it's even stage presence. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Often than not, I go to concerts and I'm just like, wow, you just like have a case of the fuck it's. Like, just fuck it. Like I'm just gonna go out there and just sit there and not what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
so conditioned in this day and age to visually judge before we listen. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's going to be definitely the next frontier of like how you present this art form, to be honest. Um,
I agree. I agree. Um so often people look like they're they're not engaged, like they're just like fuck it, I'm just dialing it in to come over here and do this gig,
exactly.
And as a musician in an orchestra, it's easy to forget that you can be seen because you're in a big group with like 60 other people, 70 other people.
Hmm. Even
You,
choruses. I'm not even saying it's just orchestras. I mean, we had our kids up there totally sitting still, like hands on their, they were just engaged. And that makes a
yeah.
huge difference. It's about professionalism.
Yeah.
So, and so it's going to be an interesting, social experiment, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be interesting in the next 20 years to see how all this shakes out. Because, we've been doing so much investing, and I've been doing so much investing in the youth.
Yeah.
It wasn't popular. And then all of a sudden, every major institution has like the buzzword of like, outreach, and they're all trying to do all sorts of things. And it's like, education, music education. Everyone's, excited about doing that. But I mean, this is an institution that's been around for 60 years, focusing on this. So I think it's great that everyone's, excited about it. But I remember a day when it was not popular to work with young people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'd just be like, "Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, that's so cute. Oh my God, you're so brave to work with young people."
This is the stuff people have said to you over the years.
Oh my God, yeah, children's choir. Oh my God, that's so nice. Isn't that sweet that you're with the children? I was like, "Are you seriously talking to me like that right now? Because they are a lot brighter than you are."
Yeah, and like talking down to you, like, oh, that's just, a little thing you do over there with the kids.
Uh-huh. I'm like, okay, let's see. No, it's called world domination. And you'll see one day when you're insignificant and obsolete. I didn't say that. I'm joking.
I know. It's funny though. Josephine, look, I saw that you got on Oprah's thing, her like Sunday Soul Sunday thing.
Till Sunday. Yeah, that was amazing.
Tell me about that.
They're little mini short documentaries
Hmm.
the network produces, and Andrea Wisham was the producer on that one, and she attended our gala, and I mean, it was just beautifully filmed, and um, just they captured it. I mean, that's
It
one.
was very well done. Yeah, it was beautiful.
She's an incredible storyteller. I mean, her team is just exceptional. I mean, that's one thing Oprah did, just produced excellence. Yeah, and came and just interviewed me. They usually select a person that is doing something that inspires them, uh,
Hmm.
and it's about your soul. And I think there was a phrase there that's basically like, as a child we come into the world so open and pure and so willing to learn, and as we get older we build these walls and these, and that's what prevents us from, seeing the light sometimes. And that's why I love working with young people, because they never have that filter. They're just dialed in to the world.
Yeah,
And
I know. And it's easy to forget until you're around kids. Now that I have one, it's
oh,
like, whoa.
isn't it amazing? They're like,
Yeah.
they get it. They actually get it a lot faster. My son, says the sweetest things. He's like, "It was the best, day ever. And I just want to cherish every moment."
Aw,
Like, it's like, where are you from?
I know. I know. My daughter, another thing, she will just she has no inhibition as far as like, I'll go on Instagram stories and I'll want to like make a video and I'll do it like 15 times and I'll be like, I forget it. It's stupid, like what I was gonna say. And you know, and she will just take the thing and like make up a song. She doesn't care if the camera is going like straight up her nostrils and she like, or how she looks or whatever. She'll just make up a song and the song is like so just off the cuff and adorable and she just like doesn't care. Like
Mhm.
there's no inhibition or it's so free. It's so much freedom,
Yes,
you know?
yes, and they see things in real time, and
Yeah.
I mean, and kids nowadays are so much more in tune. I mean, this is probably the generation that are have only touched flat screens.
Right. I know. I know like she knew how to open up a iPhone when she was 2 or whatever. Like that. Like we had like a dial phone when I was 2, like connected to the wall. It's just crazy how different things are now. It's so amazing.
Yeah, and they're learning at a different rate, and um, so it's an interesting challenge for all of us to
Yeah.
see how we can embrace technology, but also remain true and authentic, to the art form. Um, so, what I encourage young people to do, in any field they choose to, pursue, that they do it with, compassion, They do it with all, their entire soul. They have to be completely 100% bought into, why they are they exist. And I have a student named Patrick who's been teaching my kids coding, and he's going into robotics, like building robots and coding that. And
Mm-hmm.
talking about the Netflix series Black Mirror. Have you seen this?
No.
My husband got me hooked into. I'm just like obsessed with it, and you should watch it. And they're vignettes, and they introduce a new technology every episode. And he said, "Well, I'm just so glad I studied humanities because I'm going into this field, and it allowed me to create these robots with that that in mind, compassion."
Wow.
I mean, this is a 17-year-old saying this to me,
That's crazy.
right? Like, what's
Yeah.
going to differentiate us from a potential clone? I know I think like that, but sometimes I think people are so programmed because they don't know any better. I was just watching this documentary about these people who in Guatemala who live on $1 a day, and so these four guys, you know, challenge themselves to do the same, and they're documenting the whole process. And I was just in the middle of it, and I thought, wow, we have so much. But if we didn't have anything, what would bring us happiness? I
That's a
think
good question.
if I didn't have anything, I know for sure music is something that I would never be able to live without.
Yeah, that's true. So what do you have coming up for the choir? Do you have any tours or big projects coming up?
Yes, we have a huge season. So this is our 60th season. So we just finished, so kicked it off in October, had a gala that was successful. Um, we produce over 100 concerts a year. So just came off this 6 concert series with the Chicago Symphony for the holidays, Merry Merry Chicago. And now we're heading into our winter months. So we have our Black History Month concerts at Symphony Center, where we bring all 3,600 kids together from our in-school programs, and they get to connect with their top ensemble. Um, we have a World Music Festival that we're hosting, and then our big concert, our big 60th anniversary celebration is going to be on May 26th at Millennium Park, and that's where we bring all 4,400 kids together. So we're really excited about
How
that.
do you handle so many kids at once?
I'll have a rock star team. I mean, these people they work harder than anyone else I know. And we're just dialed into each other. We just know how to get it done. Everyone's really focused on the mission at hand. And yeah, it's like you can't do it alone. So yeah, we have an entire program staff, an administrative staff. Everyone works collectively. We have a really strong parent base, and of course our donors, and then the the administrators of the schools that connect with us, and the principals. So it's kind of this huge civic affair, and they all come together in Millennium Park, and we sing together at 11 a.m. It's really extraordinary. So I'm talking about producing a show around that right now. It's kind of in the quiet phase, but I'm sure it's going to be public as of today. But um, and then we take national tours. All of our neighborhood choirs tour. So some are staying local in Chicago. Some are going, to Santa Fe. It's called our Bridging America tours. Some are going to Kansas. And then our top ensemble, Voice of Chicago, has been invited to perform once again in Italy at the Ravenna Festival. They're going to be there in the Ravello Theater. They're going to be in Oretta, the Soul Music Festival. And we're still working out the itinerary
Ah,
for that. So it's,
so you'll be going to Italy soon?
yes, that's in July, mid July, for 10 days.
I'm so jealous. That's amazing. You get to do so many cool trips with them.
Well, this past September, I was actually in Como at this school called Cometa, and ended up performing just me. I went with a group of alumni because I couldn't take the kids out of school because it was mid-September. So when I was at the Ravenna Festival that is spearheaded by Cristina Muti, Riccardo Maestro Muti's wife.
Oh, really?
Yes, she founded it. And the artistic director is this gentleman named Angelo Nicastro. Amazing people, by the way. When they presented us in, I believe it was 2011, I keep thinking it's 2012, one of those years, they all blur. Um, we had 3 concerts back to back in Ravenna, and it was sold out. Like the first concert was at Pala de Andre, 5,000 seats, sold out. We did about 5 encores. It was extraordinary. After that concert, Christina Muti came up to me, and I thought she was like a vision of beauty. Like she was the coolest, hippest, most beautiful woman. She's like, bellissima, and she was just like kissing me. I was like, wow. And Angelo Castro was like, we need this in Italy, this mission, bringing all this diversity together through children and music.
Uh-huh.
So years later, he called me up and he's like, listen, I want you to come to Como, Lago di Como. They started this beautiful school. The founder is Erasmo Figini and his brother. He's like, you need to come here, and check this out. So they basically were inspired by the model of the CCC and started their own chorus there.
Wow.
The whole school, it's a vocational school. They teach English, they teach hospitality skills, textile, everything. It's all under this one umbrella, and their philosophy is to educate through beauty. It's a free school, but they have to raise funds for it. It's unbelievable. So I flew there this past September, and Maestro was there. Maestro Muti was sitting next to me. We're at the same table. He was the keynote speaker.
Oh my God.
And I did a series of workshops with my alumni, and I flew there in advance, like 3 or 4 days prior. Did an intensive workshop with their kids, and then we opened and closed the concert. And I'll tell you, it was in Milan at the Stock Exchange. It was so outstanding and powerful. These young people like transforming right under, you know, in a span of 3 to 5 days was just magical. And it was funny when Maestro spoke, his speech was like, I know sister cities are Chicago and Milano. It actually should be Chicago and Como, because the ties are so deep. And,
Oh,
working with him next month on Ivan the Terrible. And then again, Mephistopheles, I'm working with him in June. So this is a lot of connections because I went to Carnegie Hall with Maestro Carmina Burana and Othello, many years ago. And
so you've been working with Riccardo Muti a lot.
yes, many years. Started with Othello, and we did 4 performances in Chicago, and then took that to Carnegie Hall. And then we performed Carmina Burana in Chicago, and then also for opening night at Carnegie Hall several years ago. And then this 2017 season, we're doing Ivan the Terrible, Prokofiev's Ivan the Terrible, and Mephistopheles.
Wow, that's so fantastic. He's so great.
He's really incredible. I mean, and he gets it. He sees it all, right? I mean, the social aspect, the artistry, all of it. And his wife is extraordinary. She's so cool and hip. And the Italians, I mean, they're so open minded and compassionate and really just magnificent people. So it's going to be great to take 60 plus singers there this summer to continue that exchange. It's deepening our ties. Yeah, and we were, I mean, they've traveled to India. I mean, I'm also about, you know, traveling in our own country as well.
Hmm.
We're going to be doing more of that domestically. We already do it with our mid-tier neighborhood kids, but and then producing some new works. That's another thing on the agenda. We commissioned the Q Brothers. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're currently off Broadway at the West Side Theater in New York City, performing the Othello remix. So they take Shakespeare and remix it. And so we commissioned them to write a new work uh, called Long Way Home, a reimagination of Homer's Odyssey, which will premiere next year.
Oh, wow, that's very cool. So many great things coming up. I'm excited to keep hearing about it.
Yeah. I'm just so glad to reconnect with you. I'm just proud of all the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I am too. It's really great to reconnect and catch up and everything. I'm blown away by what you've been doing the last however many years it's been, 10 years, more than 10 since we've talked, really. It's been too long.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it has been too long. And that's one thing you and I shared backstage was this like passion for classical music. And then also realizing what we as artists and, and citizens need to do to continue pursuing and, pushing the good word out, but then also, understanding the reality of the circumstances and how do you, merge the two worlds.
Yeah, that's the challenge. It really is the challenge now. Okay, well, we've this has been a great interview, so I'm going to wrap it up. What is one habit or behavior you've developed that has made the most difference in your career so far?
One habit or behavior that I've developed. Let's see. Never being complacent. Is that a habit?
Yeah, I think that's a habit.
So, in other words, always feeling like it's not enough,
Mm-hmm.
which is a pro and a con, right? It's that monkey
Yeah.
on your back. I don't know why I have that. Someone thinks it's because my parents were always pushing me to do more. And yeah, always trying to challenge myself to think of, something else. To have,
That's great.
yeah. hmm 10.
It's prove
hmm
it's proven to be effective because you've grown your career in such a huge way. So it sounds like a good habit to me.
Yeah.
And who in the classical world inspires you the most?
Living or deceased?
I'd say living.
Living. I have to say, Maestro Muti, he really does.
Yeah,
He is the best. He encompasses all of it, right? The grace, the elegance, the brains, the talent, the artistry. Um, he understands socially what's going on. I've never met more thoughtful people about regarding children than the Italians.
really.
Yes, if you say even if you go to a place like a hairdresser or something, or running an errand, doing anything, if you tell them that you work with children, the ragazzi, like the bambini, they are so appreciative and so generous with their words.
Oh,
How beautiful it is.
I
And
love Italy.
yeah, and there's just like this endearment, they're just so endearing towards children. And yet I feel like sometimes, more often than not, in this country, we don't value children as much. Not that we don't, I'm just saying it's not as like loving or, oh, children are so beautiful,
Yeah,
I don't feel that same
it's a
level.
different vibe. It's a different vibe for sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like there's so much respect for children. Um,
Yeah,
and then I just feel like they don't have that. So that's one thing I've always, loved about the kids is giving them a platform to shine.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Josephine. I really appreciate you being here today and and having this conversation with me.
Thanks, Tracy. And I think we made it happen. I know it was a little rough start.
We did it. So I'm so grateful. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you're enjoying this podcast, Crushing Classical, please be sure to connect with me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/crushing classical. I'm on Instagram as Crushing Classical. And if you're loving it, please write a review on iTunes. Just log on and give me some stars and some comments.
This is why you need to watch Black Mirror, and you should start with season 3, episode 1. It's all about ratings.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's insane. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to check it out, and maybe everyone else will too. Now that you've given it props, they'll know to watch the good show.
Well, just don't watch it at night. According to Kevin, it's very, very dark. But
I know with a name like Black Mirror, I'm a little nervous.
well, as a musician, we all love beautiful, haunting, dark things. So
Yes, it's true. Thank you so much, Josephine, and thank you for everyone for listening.
all right,
Bye.
bye.